Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2, with the three-time world champion and widely considered to be the greatest of all time, the Zerg in the red, the finisher. It's Serral, facing off against the top-tier Terran from Korea in the blue. We have Ryung in a best-of-3 Terran versus Zerg showdown. And before we get started, it'd be incredible if you could smash that like button, maybe even subscribe. And we got the algorithm. And Jimmy, what do we have? Jimmy. 1,805 likes on this video, on this cast. I'll cast another one. I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I can do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As Ryung, taking his risks against any sort of early aggression, he's going to get away with it. As Serral is sending 4 Zerglings out. But he's taken the scenic route, because any impending Reaper might have been able to cut them off. But Ryung, from that old school style of Korean Terrans who thought they could build 3, 4, 5 command centers and get away with it. And they were right, but just thinking it was a little bit offensive, unlike their strategies. The Zerglings are waiting for the Reaper to move out. The Overlord not risking getting any closer, because this map doesn't have a pervert pillar for the Overlord to hang around and creep everyone out. Even before lair tech, obviously. So, without that, risking the Overlord moving forward is something Serral seems unwilling to do, but already an awkward start. Well, he saw the command center timing. He knows this is command center first. And he knows there's a chance these Zerglings, the moment speed finishes, which is quite quickly. A single Marine, there's no wall. The Zerglings are in the base. It's an absolute disaster. The SCVs are pulled off the line. It's going to be the working class who suffers the most. The blue mineral workers getting ripped apart by the Zerglings. The oldest trick. It's not even a trick. It's just a basic strat. It's a skill check. It's an architectural check. And right now, 6 SCVs have been checked into the unit's loss tab, and 1 Zergling will be checking out of the base. A survivor of the great raid of 3 minutes. Taking full advantage. I said, well, he's going to get away with it. That sort of greedy Terran, that 3cc, full economic focus. No. Serral lining up the early Zerg Rush, if you would, and finding a significant amount of success. Now, we have to remember, every set of Zerglings made is not a drone. Yes, it's an either-or. And that is the struggle/nuance of the Zerg economy, is every set of Zerglings has prevented you from getting drones. And less drones means less in the future, and it starts that exponential curve a little bit later. The third hatchery is on the later side of things. The Queen's ambling, stoically marching their way down. There's a Viking first, and 2 factories behind this. As Ryung going to be taking us to McDonald's immediately. I don't know if Serral could intuit that from what he saw on the other side with the Zerglings, but really, if you had to narrow down Terrans who didn't go 3cc into 1 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport, you'd just be removing all of the Terrans. This is by far the most common strategy, even if the route to get there has been a little bit different. The Queens will politely, violently, and firmly ask the Viking to leave, and the Viking, unlike the Queens, can just fly away, trying to take down the Overlord. So far got 1. That was the sacrificial one on the other side from earlier. A lair has begun. Serral, 54 drones, but not nearly the sort of massive lead you might expect, because those early Zerglings and the fact that Ryung had a 3rd command center on top of the command center first. So while 6 SCVs died, it's still kind of a mixed bag, whether it was a net win for Serral overall. Zerglings chewing through the rocks down the center. 4th hatchery is on the way, going for the triangle base. Usually a little bit more vulnerable because it's physically closer to where the Terrans usually like to attack. Also, there's some pretty nasty tank locations, but that's most maps that aren't a flat open field. So, all of them. Really, the ideal map for Zerg would be Iowa. But, unfortunately, we're not quite that corny. Spire. Mutas? In this economy? Well, he's building up the drone count, 9 more in production. Has yet to realize he's dealing with mech. And mutas... Oh, yeah. Hey, boys, in the pipe, 5x5, am I right? What? That's Marine doing its best cosplay so far. Well, it doesn't need the changeling. The Overseer will spot several Cyclones. And now, does Serral change course? His Spire is nearly completed. Cyclones are quite a threat, but in smaller numbers, they're actually significantly worse for cost against mutas than Marines. They're less vulnerable to banelings, but the mutas, if he's able to pump enough of them out, just overwhelm the Cyclone lock-ons. But if the numbers are anywhere close to even, the Cyclones just lock on and slowly glide away while knocking them out of the sky. But a big counterattack. Serral doesn't pick up too many SCVs. I think just one. But now chewing up a few more Hellions. And a couple SCVs who were contracted out to wall this off, announcing some delays, which is fair, though frowned upon. The Hellions. The mutas have yet to be revealed. That's because they don't exist yet. But there's only 4 Cyclones with this army. Thing about engaging in, you have to know before the fight starts. You cannot dance back and forth against the Cyclones. That's what they're literally designed for. Locking on and just backing away. So many Terran units are just optimized for cowardice. And I'm sure they wouldn't phrase it that way, but while they're still writing their essays, just make sure to smash that like button if you agree. Meanwhile, the Zerglings with the wraparound. The mutas on the other side of the map not chasing this down, and that means Ryung in a bit of an awkward spot. The mutas flapping back to flank, and Serral 2 steps ahead. And overhead as well. Knocked down a couple Cyclones. The lock-ons will automatically target the mutas if they're anywhere nearby. They're coded to do so. But much like the Thor with its anti-air attack. But they still have to be relatively close. You can easily draw out the lock-ons with the Zerglings and then swing in with the mutas moments later. But unfortunately, the scan, 1, 2, 3 mutas knocked out of the sky by the Magfield Accelerator Cyclones. The beautiful wall over here, keeping the Zerg out. He knows they're not sending their best, but... And even walling off the rock side of it, why not? You don't want to have that risk. So the mutas not finding overwhelming success. Ryung, 71 SCVs. Thing about this composition is it doesn't have that sort of stopping power that the heavy metal mech, the Thors, the siege tanks, the Liberators do in the later game. Much like Zerg, once you get close to 200 supply, you kind of want to trade it away to try to get a better economic position. He's not working towards a death ball of mass Cyclone. I mean, it might end up there, but that's certainly not the ideal. The autumn-colored SCVs, very vulnerable to the mutas flying by, and the first upgrade finishing for anyone, any basic upgrade, is going to be Flyer Attack level 1. Even, well, Ryung, the Cyclones, and the Hellions do not benefit very much from upgrades at all. Because the Blue Flame, I assume he has Blue Flame, he does, just does flat extra damage to light units. Whereas the Magfield Accelerator is an ability or a spell. But we don't call them ability users because that just sounds awkward, to say the least. But, which means armor does not affect it, weapons do not affect it. So the use cases for actual upgrades are relatively limited. Getting +1 mech armor to cover everything. And Banelings roll in, the Cyclone's coming back. 3 SCVs dead, and Serral has torn down the wall, but if it costs him even a couple mutas... well, Serral is, he's now got the bottom left corner. He's got the gold base. The income is sliding heavily towards the Finnish Zerg, though he's just now finishing up the Hive, which on the later side, though certainly not late. The Hellions roasting some more of the drones, but honestly 90 drones is probably the max you want. Serral says, don't be silly. Builds 5, 6 more. Neural Parasite in production. The Hell Clones still, finally, Ryung starting to split them. And to be fair, like I mentioned, having too few Cyclones is how you lose the game. You need to have more than enough in your army, otherwise Serral just runs it over. If you have too few, then the Zerg will jump it. But if you have them all in one spot, obviously Serral can just hit where he's not. So, some basic strategy, but working out well right now for both sides. The Whittle Mines thinning out a whole lot of the Lings and Banes before they can close the distance against the very mobile mech army. Did we have some siege? No. It's still mines, cyclones, and hellions. Not a single siege tank, not a single Thor. SCVs, of course, added on as well, but some infestors by Microbial Shroud in production. Wow, that's a rare Pokemon there. And if he actually uses it, I might go through the effort of describing it, but still not much of a use case here. Greater Spire in production. Serral, the mutas and banelings. The banelings, what is happening? Okay, well, obliterates another 16 SCVs. And so far, the scattered rain, the shotgun blast of corrosive bile, alongside the constant counterattacks have kept Ryung from even getting close to 200 supply. He's still a threat, as Cyclones can really stack up the damage quickly, but Serral has actually lost less resources against one of the most cost-effective potential army compositions, as Ryung just keeps bleeding out Cyclones and is unable to make much progress against the economy, but the Widow Mine just slams into the Mutalisk. Fungal completely misses the mark. There's more where that came from. Now, the Microbial Shroud has actually no use against this army. The Microbial Shroud reduces all ranged attack damage under the Shroud by 50%. That includes things like mutas attacking Cyclones. So the Cyclones, if they're underneath the Microbial Shroud, the mutas will do less damage, and the Cyclones will still do full damage because, one, it doesn't affect air, and two, that lock-on is a spell. So it does spell damage. True damage. I've always liked the term true damage. I feel like it's the most descriptive. It's clear, it goes through everything. I think I might start using it more. But then it evokes League of Legends. Alright. Which some might argue supplanted StarCraft too, but being able to complain about your teammates is a lifelong skill that most people would love to have. Like and subscribe if you also like following along and blaming other people. Starports on the way for Ryung. The Widowmine starting to rack up more and more damage, and Serral completely out of position. The creep was pushed back, and the Cyclones come through the trees. Serral just not even bothering to deal with this. He's transitioned. Well, just infestors. The mutas got knocked out of the sky a while ago. Their number whittled down a lot by the Widowmines, and I assume taken out by the Cyclones. +3 flyer attack is still on the way, but that carries over potentially into Broodlords. As Brenda, what are you doing? This is the last time we used Apple Maps. Use Apple Maps. You said that last time. I'm getting real turned around. Well, we know. Sorry. Cyclones on the high ground, and Ryung 20. Oh! You know what's really good against Cyclones? Cyclones. Incredibly good. In fact, for several months, the entire TVT meta was Mass Cyclone. And honestly, I think that's why Clem just plays Protoss against Terran now. It was during the Cyclone meta, when Cyclones were bugged to be even stronger than they currently are, that everyone was going Mass Cyclone. And begun! The Clone Wars have. Though, I'm not sure Ryung quite expected it this way. Mass Banshee speed with a Raven being added on. Part of the benefit of going for of Cyclones and Hellions and Mines is there are no strong targets. Cyclones they're all good, but none of them is make or break to the unit composition. There are no siege tanks, there are no Thors, which are liabilities if you're... One at a time, please. They're liabilities when dealing with Neural Parasite without ghosts. And Ryung seems intent on avoiding the ghosts entirely. And so far, Serral has been picking apart bits and bytes of the army, continually dragging Ryung back to his base, though it's been superficial damage. Serral has started losing more and more resources, and the fact that Ryung was able to knock out that bottom left corner, he was able to do damage on the 3 o'clock base, means that Serral's economic lead has dwindled somewhat. He's mined 7,000 more minerals and 4,000 more gas, but he hasn't yet really found that much to show for it. But the Lords of the Brood have joined the field, or, well, lording above it. And Cyclones are not, with any infestors underneath. Cyclones are not enough. Oh, no, not that. Ah! Unfortunately, or fortunately, Serral just wanders in with the infestors, which have the survivability of a toddler with a flamethrower. And speaking of flamethrowers, even more drones gonna go down, losing 3/4 of the infestors. He's left with 5 of them, which is more than I thought, but that is why the Broodlords are so invincible. That is why Ryung has to shift from the Cyclones to the Nordic mythology composition as Thors and Vikings. 4 Thors and 16 years ago, this unit composition was pioneered against Zerg, who was going infestors and Broodlords. And now, 16 years later, of which Ryung has played professionally for all of those years. Fun fact. Unless you just remember, in which case, how's the back pain? Well, he took a break for military service, I think, around 2019. But the point stands. It's been Infestor Broodlord versus Thors and Vikings. No ghosts. Not even bothered. He still has a barracks, I assume, floating around somewhere. The Thors are walled into the base! Wait, are they? I can't... One of the Thors is. The Broodlord's trying to engage, but multiple Thors... He needs to keep scanning. He desperately needs to deal with the infestors. Because again, in this case, it's not so much Thors are very good against Thors. It's that each of them does so much damage to the Broods. And if you can take the Thors on the front line, it makes it way easier to break through to the back without losing your critical mass of Broodlords. Serral only has 6 of them, which is enough to be dangerous, force this unit composition, but not enough to be a liability, where if you lose them, the game is just over, which we've seen, honestly, too many times. A few Widow Mines spotted, Corrosive Bile surgically taking it out from orbit. Don't know where those Corrosive Biles go. The Hell Clones going for some counterattack damage. The Thors will siege up the infestors. There's no siege tank, so I feel like he could just grab the Thors on the front line. It'd be almost impossible to take him out. This base just being sacrificed by a Serral to try to get some more of his own. Ryung about to lose the planetary down the center. It's taking quite a while. The Vikings, Fungal holds him down. Corrosive Bile actually knocks him out because there's no other anti-air. Neuroparasite's a Viking. Going to take out the Raven with the Viking almost. And it's effectively a stun. But the Hell Clones are still burninating across the countryside. The counterattack base trade. Ryung has lost a base, but he's taken one of Serral's and he's looking for more. The thing is, Ryung is at 142 supply, and he's flat broke. Serral is at 180 with 7,000 minerals and 5,000 gas. He can afford to make mistakes. And I don't think he has made mistakes. It felt like that wasn't super clear, but there are a few little micro issues with, you know, dealing with an incredibly difficult composition where if even one part of your army wanders forward, the Cyclones will take it out in a split second. But Serral has navigated a relatively treacherous path to getting to this late game army. And Ryung has been brawling with him. But I think, much like your mother, Serral's in a different weight class. Ryung has done a whole lot of not dying. The Hellcone composition makes it very hard to actually roll over until you have this sort of hive tech. As Cyclone's still holding the high ground, but at this point, there's almost no wrong answers for Serral. The main base is effectively mined out for both sides. The natural, completely gone for Ryung. Same with Serral. Been quite an action-packed 20 minutes. Oh my, he's gonna go Interference Matrix. The things Ryung will do to not make ghosts. He's going Interference Matrix. Why? Did you know that Interference Matrix works on psionic units? Not a rhetorical question. It can work on infestors, technically queens and vipers. It's just ghosts exist, so most of the time that is kind of ignored as a functionality. Obviously it works on mechanical, but I guess he could interference matrix. Does that work? If he gets neural parasite, could he interference matrix his own Thors? I don't know. I don't think that would break the... Huh. I mean, that's obviously a useless, almost useless, not entirely. If you can't interfere, that's a lot of theory craft. I don't think he'll do it, but there's a non-zero chance we see that sort of edge case interaction. But right now, Ryung is on the edge of disaster, whereas Serral is just waiting for his moment to kick him over the edge. By his own hand, ideally. The Thors are a little bit too slow. Could grab some of the ray interference matrix on several of the infestors. Unfortunately, I don't think there's ever going to be enough Ravens, Thors, or anything else. Serral now has more Thors than Ryung, and his bell gets Ryung. GG. Serral with a decisive, if long-winded, 1-0 lead. Ryung with a dogged commitment to the non-ghost strategy. I've never seen, I don't think I've ever seen in recent history, anyone go interference matrix to try to replace ghosts with ravens. All right, the Brood War style of putting your EMP on the flying spellcaster. But, well, maybe if it was a little bit earlier, but in the end, it didn't even matter. But still, a dangerous game from Ryung, but a confident victory out of Serral. At no point did it feel like Serral was losing. It just, at different points, it felt like it was a little bit harder to start winning. It was supposed to sound profound, but instead it sounded very dumb. But we're just going to blaze right past that. Just like Ryung has decided on a decidedly different style in order to engage Serral in game number 2. This is what we like to call a designated pressure build, where you focus on a robust early game aggression in order to dictate and take the initiative and dictate the response of your potential opponent. So it's in order to maintain a competitive economy in a relatively large potential market, you need to narrow it down to your niche. And you got to decide what niche that is. And sometimes that means changing up your production. Sometimes that means changing up your just overall strategy. And in this case, we've circled back to the filthiest cheese of all time. The Proxy 2 Rex. Ryung was on a team with Maru and Beyond back in the day. Wait, no. He was on Team Slayers. I think Maru was never on Slayers. He was on Prime. Slayers, like MM. Anyways, the Proxy 2 Rex Marine Rush. Another SCV is coming across the map at a suspicious time. Wait, is that suspicious? No, that's a normal time. No, I'm the dumb one. My instinct was that was a fake, but no. He sends the SCV, but there's 2 more. Here we go. 2 bunkers in production. I don't think you can wall this off. The drones are pulled off the line, but Serral had no suspicions until the bunkers showed up. A spine crawler was on the way. But the Marines... That's not a wall, right? Like, he's just... Is it? Well, I am... There's no way. Maybe it was just so far that Serral didn't want to bother with it. And it may have been the right choice. He kills 6 drones. Now, Ryung is... in a tough spot economically, obviously. The Marines are jammed into the corner. Serral putting them there. The bunkers will complete. And the Zerglings are out. So I think this is... He's going to try to box out the Marines. The Marines will never actually enter the bunkers. It was just the idea of the bunkers that was doing so much damage. Is Ryung actually confident enough to expand on the low ground? This is a macro cheese. Macro Rhodian cheese. Classic. The Overlord will spot it. The Zerglings are headed across the map. 3 SCVs dead with this, so Serral lost a lot of drones, and Ryung changes course at the last moment. Though, I think a smart move. He probably could have gotten away with it, but it would have been a whole kerfuffle to deal with those Zerglings. So, He doesn't know how many exactly Serral sent across. He could have built more that obviously he didn't see because he was fighting for his life in the corner. Yeah, 3 command center. So right now, Ryung has 2 barracks in the air, 3 command center, well, 2 command centers in production. Yeah. The only way, at least the most typical way, and most obvious way, and most plausible, is to leapfrog the economy. Serral will regain the economic lead because, well, Ryung can't do anything about it. His barracks are flying home. He has half a dozen Marines, which is enough to keep Serral from just taking a third. So, enough Marines to stay safe without potentially doing any more damage. And Ryung, he hides that third command center on the edge of the main where it's Ryung just scouring for lings and maybe overlords, but notice how Serral has only sent 1 overlord across the map in each of these games. There's been 2 games. That last game was pretty long, all right? It felt like multiple games. I get that a lot. But because Terrans of this caliber will kill. And it is very unlikely you'll get extra information from a second overlord before it's an overseer. You'll get the same level of information usually from just running Zerglings around. So, and if that first or second overlord even gets sniped off in the early game, that is a huge speed bump on your build. As not only does it cost a decent bit, but getting supply blocked at the wrong time could potentially stifle larva production. Now, none of that is a risk here, but the little details, the housekeeping details for Zerg are incredibly important. Okay, pretty much everything the queens have to do. They creep spread, injects, defense, and without it, well, or with mismanagement even, Zerg would probably be in a disastrous spot. Well said, your check is in the mail. What? I thought he'd want confirmation. Shut up, Brenda. I know. Sorry. Ryung pulls the SCVs, as Serral threatens with just enough Zerglings to scare him, which at the same time is enough Zerglings that if Ryung moved out would just eat the Marines alive until they weren't. +1 is on the way. It's going to be bio this time around. After a solid mech game, but that may have been too much of a reach, considering he would have to go for all the gases, get the factories. He's essentially starting from below 0 when it comes to tech progression, because his barracks had to fly all the way home, and he had to wall off with the command center, at least significantly behind the baseline. But the Overseer gets in, and all he needed to know, oh, well, really all I need to see with the engineering base. Of course, Serral uses the Abathur announcer. I'm reluctant. On the our Korean player, who usually have a big fan of certain other game characters. Okay, it's Devo, right? So many players use Devo. It's in Korean, I assume. But it gets local. If the announcer has multiple languages, also using Abathur. For some reason on replays, we use the announcer that the players are using. That's actually true, which is one I also use. Like, if you use my announcer, it gets localized into 2 languages, which are English and American, one of which is more intelligible. And the other wouldn't be accused of the sort. But Ryung and Serral, both fully evolved players, and now continuing to evolve their tech. +2-2, already on the way for Ryung, who's going to have an almost full upgrade advantage. His 2-2 will be done right around when Serral finishes up his 1-1. Which, and Serral, without a massive economy, in fact, he barely has a lead at all. The income has shifted right back towards Ryung, as he got that 3rd command center so quickly, and Serral played a very middle-of-the-road style. He made sure there wasn't a risk of just a bunch more Marines walking across. But again, that limited is economic progression. Baneling Mines. I love it. If there's one thing you're unlikely to do on just 3cc, it's scan randomly. The thing about Baneling Mines is they don't recharge a massive missile and fire at range. So Serral looks like he's going to try to bait him into it. But Ryung just picks up. The idea is good, and the threat is still there. He has yet to reveal it. The Zerglings just keep running, which Ryung doesn't seem to have really acknowledged until it was already a bit too late. The Widow Mines, Prairie Dogs 1, maintains the threat. Lings and Banes on the left side. Hive is halfway there. Serral's still a little vulnerable at this timing. 2-2 is about to finish. This counterattack is starting to be quite a conundrum. In fact, he's even going to burrow one of the Zerglings underneath the third command center, preventing it from landing. It might be the only one. Okay, he has more energy for scans. There it is. Now we'll see if he puts it together and realizes Baneling Mines could be a threat. I'm sure in his head, like intellectually, it's there. But in the spur of the moment, I doubt he's going to remember or feel, will it behoove him to scan? Will it behoove me to try to figure out whether I use that word correctly? I don't know. Find out more. It behooves you. It's behoove people to like and subscribe and just move on. Jimmy, edit that out if I'm wrong. Ooh, don't expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. The Marine left behind. Ryung still making decent progress. But Serral has reached Hive Tech, and that means... I mean, this is the most obvious game for... This is the most obvious game for adrenal glands. Yeah, obvious. Yeah, what am I saying? Obviously, they can't see... Stop saying that. See each other underground, because, you know, the ground. There's a chance occasionally the Widow Mine will do an odd thing if there's a unit burrowed. All units, but Widow Mine's probably the biggest offenders. That it'll just kind of move off to the side and try to burrow closely. And there it is. The Ultralisk Cavalry. Such a clear option at this stage. Up against the Marines, the Marauders, the Mines, the Medevacs, and oh, the M&M is well known for its strength, its mobility, but in the face of the largest Zerg unit, at least on the ground, pales in comparison. You need Marauders. You need Liberators. Well, Ryung's already adding in Marauders, probably anticipating exactly this. Widow Mine taken out. I think it killed the Burrowed Banes with it, because of course it did. Meanwhile, terrible, terrible damage across the board. Infestors catching a whole lot of Marines and several Widow Mines. Though Ryung's supply isn't dipping much because he has the upgrade advantage. At least he did up until a second ago. And it's very easy to pump out this many units. He's got 8 racks. He's got 4 bases. In fact, he's got the supply lead. Serral doesn't even have that much money for Ultras at the moment. He's getting chitinous plated. He started 3-3. 88 drones on his 4 bases, but a drop on the left side. And Lings and Banes are forcing the Marines all the way back. Serral move commanding the Banelings into the mineral line. The SCVs move commanded out. Maybe a little late, but they might be able to escape. Is there any way he didn't notice that? He saw it. Cheeky little Baneling mine mid-fight, but right in front of his eyes. And Serral kind of losing some momentum over the last 2 minutes of pretty much constant fighting. Ryung has destroyed 7,200 minerals and 600 gas. Against just 4,600, 475. I could have just rounded to 500. It just, my brain melted. 200 Zerglings down, but Daddy's home. The Ultralisk. Though still a paperlisk for now. Chitinous plating is not done, but the Banelings close the distance. Picks up some of the Marauders and gets out, and Serral will keep those early Ultralisks alive. As the Queen's patching them all up. Chitinous plating about to complete. Does he have speed queued up behind? Indeed he does. Immediately. Widow Mine still taking bites out of the Zerglings. The Ultra's off of creep. Stim Marines and Marauders are a decent clip quicker. So that's why the Infestors are so absolutely critical. One fungal is ready, and Ryung seems completely committed to the ghostless style. And we'll see if it costs him everything, or if it helps him focus on what's most important. Ghost for just... the risk of going mass ghost... Well, trying to go ghost is the transition phase. When you get 5 or 6 ghosts against 7 or 8 ultras, it's like shooting at a brick wall. Alright, no matter how many armor-piercing rounds you try to put through it, it's still a brick wall. Apparently, if you put like 20 of them, it might affect the structural integrity. The idea is you need at least double the amount of ultras they have in ghosts to reliably take them out. Of course, the ghosts aren't so bad at everything else as well. We know that. We've seen that. I'm sure you have strong opinions on that. But it takes a while to get there, and Ryung seems to have no intention of heading down that road. Getting beaten back over to the left side, and between the Infestors and Ultras, every single Zergling bar 1 was taken down. But the Ultras and Infestors will survive. The wheat cut from the chaff. And Ryung? No Ghost Academy. He built 3 more racks a moment ago. He's at 11 barracks. Which is, he's doubling down almost on the Marines and Marauders. Those medevacs are almost dead. Not quite able to be taken out with a fungal. Actually, still several off. 5 Marauders at a time. He forgot Concussive Shell, which does not affect the Ultralisks, but in fact, it affects things like Banelings and Zerglings, which is kind of a big... And Infestors. Of course, Marauders kill Infestors in, like, a strong glance, so... These Serral Festers making their way through. Unfurling at the right time, potentially, in order to take out another chunk of units. And, oh my, the double drop at the back. And Ryung's still doing a great job with the Marines and Marauders. Lumbar support Infestor, very important. Last time I did this, I strained my shoulder trying to unburrow my Infestor, so gotta be careful. Almost as old as Ryung. 34, all right? Pretty much, start, get your life insurance ready. I'm not talking about the StarCraft 2 version. That's way more depressing. You know. Meanwhile, Ultras, Fungals holding it down. The Ultras just chewing through everything. A visceral experience and not a fun one for the Terrans. No, it's over now. Almost none of them survive as the Fungal holds them down. Can't pick them up into the medevacs. Couple Ultras on the planetary. Serral looking the other way for a moment. A bit disjointed. And losing the 3 or 4 Ultras can start to spiral. As Ryung has maintained a 4 or 5 bases. It's certainly still a heavy advantage with the heaviest units for the finisher. But, no. Ryung is still in a terrible spot. He is 1 mediocre fight away from death. Serral is several bad ones away from losing the lead. Ryung still dancing around. It's still Marines, Marauders. He has not progressed in any way, just continually adding mech armor upgrades. Doesn't even have building armor. And Serral, I think, has enough acid here to neutralize this base. Slams into it after getting as many SCVs as possible nearby. The scan... When the game slows down like this, it's never a good sign for the Bio Army. Kind of like last game. Honestly, Ryung is doing the same thing, just with a different unit composition. This battle group style of Terran, where you try not to give the Zerg a viable target. You try not to have too much of your supply in one place, because the Fungals can, of course, help rip it apart. But at the same time, have enough DPS to take out bases and threaten smaller armies. And Ryung's done a pretty okay job of towing the line. But the Ultras are crossing it now. A few Infestors behind. The Widow Mine's actually did quite a number on this, and the sheer biomass of the Marauders will force the Ultras back onto the creep. Meanwhile, a couple more Ultras over to the right side, but Planetary's dotting the outside. Another fungal, but the Ultras are just gone! Whoa, Ryung just tearing through all of them. The sheer amount of... He's hunting Ultras onto the creep, which is a bold move, without the Zerglings to draw their fire and do the extra damage. Well, Ryung looking the other way again. Fungal comes out. Might be able to snipe the Ultra. Doesn't quite get it. And Serral turns a defeat into a decisive victory as Ryung really bungles the extraction maneuver there. Another wave of Lings and Banes. Serral has used his entire bank. Ryung does not have one. Almost a exact situation to last game. Sure, the cast of characters here is different, but I feel like the results might be the same, with Serral with a bunch of infestors backing up his attack on an outlying base. Ryung retreats back without nearly enough units to stop it, but he's going to try to stall it out for maybe long enough, but there's no light at the end of the tunnel. He retreats back to his natural. There's a drop out to the north side, but Serral smashes the center base. Queens, get off my creep! No. Oh. Oh, that was pretty rough. This is all pretty rough, Susan. I know, I was just trying to make light of it. I know. Sorry, I am. Ryung, 150 supply. Another hatch down. He's gotten 6 of them this game. Oh, Widowmine, Prairie Dog, Micro. Serral keeps trying to draw out dancing back and forth in Widowmine range. Doesn't have any Ravagers to easily snipe them up. Pretty much you just send out the ritual sacrifice Zerglings. Ultras. Some Zerglings in the third. Widowmine hit. It's 14 Lings, but still not enough. Serral chewing up the third base, or the 3 o'clock base. Ryung with a counterattack, still fighting on the field. The Zerglings are starting to cut off the reinforcements. Ryung putting up a good front, but there's almost no home to go back to. He's had 14 SCVs. How true it is. Tries to snipe off another infestor, succeeds, but at what cost? Another queen wandering around, but I think they'll survive this time around. The Ultras. Another fungal. And Ryung fighting to the bitter end. I think this is the end. Indeed. GG. Serral 2-0. Ryung, almost as always, making it interesting, making it dramatic. But he couldn't make it across the finisher. Bringing us to our anti-spoiler game, which involves more people trying to cheese Serral. Which, few get away with it. And spoilers, this player's not named Hero, so probably will struggle. But Serral against Holy Hit. These matches from Homestory Cup 28. I believe the group stage. Holy Hit, one of the top Grandmaster Protoss on Europe, which is probably what Serral has by far the most practice in his entire career against. Since like 35 out of 50 players in the top 50 GM on Europe are Protoss, including Clem. If, I feel like if anyone... Thing is, when you're at the top, who do you practice with? I don't know if he practices with... So, Trigger is on Team Basilisk, alongside Raynor and Serral. I don't know if Clem will actually practice with Serral. I know he'll stream snipe him, but Serral very rarely streams, and I kind of feel like they have a contract where he has to make, like, one piece of content a month, which is good. So if you haven't yet checked out the Team Basilisk YouTube channel, I think it's just Basilisk Gaming on YouTube, Serral breaks down another one. He actually broke down the World Finals against Classic. And most of it comes down to Serral saying, well, I kind of just was knew exactly what he was going to do, so I just responded perfectly. But there are a few little details in there. And even though his tone is, like, nonchalant, you could tell how every single thing, the Doctor Strange, 2 billion, however many multiverses, how to get out ahead. Need some multiverses to put together sentences for myself, but, you know, we all have our struggles. Anyway, shout out to both Take TV and Basilisk Gaming for sponsoring good games for the fans and good gamers as well. Let's see what holy hits. I'm not sure. Evokes Paladin. Maybe that's just because I got sucked back into World of Warcraft, but I digress. Well, that's how I got to StarCraft. My World of Warcraft Arena partners decided to stop playing Arena one day because they went out and bought some game called StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. So I did. This is 16 years ago. And anyways, yada, yada, yada. Yada, yada, yada. Now we're here. Also, I'm having an argument with my wife. Bringing her up a lot lately. I said twice, but she thinks it's yada, yada, yada. Like Y-A-D-I, not yada, yada, yada. Y-A-D-A. It also sounds very awkward to, like, do an intellectual discussion on the term. But I'm not insane. It's yada, 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 right? Not yada, yada, yada. Though I could see how, depending on what you're predisposed to hearing, but also I'm right. I'm not, this isn't referencing anything specific, just the general zeitgeist of saying yada, yada, yada. Or alternatives, which people don't really do nowadays, I don't think. Except for dramatic effect, which is how all language works. But I digress, and regress, and progress. And begging you for likes and subscribes. Thank you for watching. We cover important topics here. She's wrong. Twilight Council, of course. An oracle. Where are you going? You want to show off your... Wanted to show off his beams to the oracle, I guess. Interesting choice. Glaives on the way. The Mass Adept Glaives. A classic cheese. Just like in that video I told you to watch against Classic. Which I believe he tried at least 1 or 2 glaives. Because you play any series, especially against Serral, it feels like every Protoss will try Glaive Adepts once and usually regret it. Or it just wins. Like, there's not a whole lot of give and take with the Glaive Adepts. They're a unit that is very strong right up until they aren't. They're not good enough in close combat, and they cost more than charge. They cost gas. So it slows down the rest of your tech. They're not better at DPS than either Stalkers or Charge Loss. Their whole thing is shading by your army and getting into your mineral line. And that is one of the more reliable ways to potentially kill Serral. Of course, the process of doing so is more difficult. He's waiting until Glaives is already done. Held on to it, but now 50 shades with Glaives. There we go. Serral. Actually didn't notice. Well, feels like a little bit slow on the reaction, but he does have a wall off, which is locking his drones out. Going to go for stasis mid-fight. Whoa, okay. Could have been much worse. The Adepts Well, both sides, I think, want to take down this evolution chamber, so walls them out. And what looked to me like a bit of a panic was, I think, just a very measured... Oh, no. Oh, no. He's human! Oh, he fucked it up! Oh, he has to get out of his own base. Didn't cancel the Evo chamber. Now, because the Adept count has been whittled down to almost nothing, it's not really an existential threat, but Serral definitely meant to cancel that, just didn't notice till the last second, so he has to spend several more seconds taking down his Evo chamber. Just saying. All right, Lucille! All right, Sybil! Jennifer! Jennifer! What? Scooch over. What? We each have our spot. I need more space. I get claustrophobic. That feels ironic. You don't know what irony means. Now's not the time to debate words. We're not word nerds. Is there a word for that? No! Stop! I don't... Sorry. I whacked out for a moment. Well, here come the queens to provide any sort of anti-air, but there's only one oracle, so... Well, the queen's gonna get blasted right off the bat, but actually juggles with the overlord, and there's limited anti-air. No charge, blink is on the way. Another... What a save! And the Ravagers. Well, Serral has quite a supply lead. Holy hit with 50 or 65 probes. And whoa, the force fields are perfect. And there's no Ravagers on that side. Wow, what a beautiful force field wall. Unfortunately, eventually it gets jammed into the corner. The force fields will dissipate. The Immortal's taken down. And honestly, a much stronger defense than I expected. But there was almost no defense strong enough to stop this counterattack from smashing its way through. The queens coming... Oh, how does it feel? He hard-walled off himself. It's an epidemic. And the Immortal can't get out. I don't think he noticed that, because why would the Immortal be stuck juggling some of the Adepts back? Trying to hold him. Repowers the gates. Though he can't stick around for long because the Corrosive Bow could just take it out. Or the Queens could do it. Either way, it works. And I think that's just far too much. GG! Serral. A decisive counterattack and victory, though. Holding him with some clever moments there. Serral with a vengeance decides he could just take him down. Ryung holding the line for quite a while. Serral just drowning him eventually. Holy hit crumbling a little quicker, but a much more committed all-in will do that for you. So, hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully it made your day just a little bit better. And if you got the means of motivation, it'd be awesome to check out Patreon, YouTube membership, or, well, like and subscribe. It's still free, at least for now. So thank you to our meal tier patrons, Big Jiggy, Devin, Door, Kate, Mario, Soup for the extra support, and thank you for watching. Make sure to check out this video. Jimmy picked it out just for you. And, well, I'll see you next time. Good luck. Have fun. Thank you for watching. Stay chill.